This is Chris Carlson, and welcome to the Boulder Banking Podcast. My guest is Chris Craver, Senior Vice President, Head of Digital Products at Valley Bank. The focus of our conversation was how technology is affecting the banking industry. Chris has a unique perspective on this topic since he has a banking background and then spent many years in the tech world. Pay special attention to Chris's thoughts on what the banking industry is doing currently in terms of technology, but also what he believes the future looks like. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Chris.
So, Chris, I know we're going to talk a lot of technology today, but before we get started, can you give us a brief background of Chris Craver?
Born and raised in Buffalo, New York. And actually, I started my banking career at what was then a $20 billion institution known as M&T Bank. And I had the great fortune of literally plugging them into the internet. I was in the data center at a time where I can just remember it vividly. And it was a very exciting time, for sure in my career and in banking. But I deviated after a little bit of time there, learning the operations environment and, bringing online and digital into the world of banking there. Worked at IBM for 7 years as a security and privacy consultant, got to work for or to consult with a number of the largest organizations in the world, many of them financial services institutions. But I was always passionate about mobile and financial services. I used to buy phones off of eBay from other countries, particularly Japan, and smartphones before there was anything like the iPhone. Yes, I'm old enough to know that there was a time before the iPhone. And I went back to M&T to help bring mobile banking to them. Although back then it was things like text banking and banking on your flip phone. I had the great fortune from there to join a startup, and that's what moved me here to the Bay Area, just outside of San Francisco in California. And we actually built software then and distributed it to the likes of B of A, Cap One, Fifth Third, and even Hills Bank, Iowa was one of my first banks that we deployed some of this technology to. And so I've always been at this intersection of financial services and technology. And more recently, my career has led me to lead product at a startup, a fintech startup. It's Varo Money, but then became Varo Bank. We're the first fintech to receive a national banking license and helped scale that from our first to our millionth customer. It was a tremendous experience. I took a slight detour into digital health, worked for the second largest pharmaceutical company in the world. We were focused on clinically validated or scientific evidence that digital products could be effective treatments for conditions or diseases. A fascinating environment. And believe me, Chris, if you think that the regulatory environment in financial services is stringent, try the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry. And because of some of those experiences, found my way back to financial services. And about 15 months or so, I joined Valley Bank, headquartered in New Jersey.
So you're in the Bay Area. Why jump back in the banking industry? Kind of why Valley? Why now?
Yeah, great question. And so, a big part of this for me is it's always been financial services for me. So when I talk about that, that experience, it's always been, where's the intersection of, technology and, financial solutions? And then, what is the right environment to bring some of this to bear? So you heard from my background that I've worked at, both large organizations and small organizations and startup organizations. And I like to describe Valley Bank as, the Goldilocks opportunity, certainly. And so it's not so large that you're, fighting things like organizational inertia. We're doing this thing because it's the way that we've, always done it and will always do it. Or when you're on the startup side, oftentimes you're, you've not established your brand. where you don't have product market fit and you're still working on establishing business fundamentals. So here at Valley, it's right in the middle of those things. It's an established brand. We've been around since 1927. So a tremendous amount of trust, from our communities and organizations. We have, 250 branches in New York, New Jersey, Alabama, and Florida. But now also because of the investment we're making in technology and digital, we can acquire customers nationally. And we're just at the beginning of that journey. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to put my fingerprint on, what the Valley of the future will look like.
Well, tell us a little bit more about your role at Valley.
I lead a team of around 20 or so professionals working on our digital capabilities. Our responsibilities span both retail and business. It includes everything from acquiring new customers 100% digitally, supporting our business growth, as well as enhancing our branches with new capabilities so that they can improve efficiency and customer experience, and all the way to managing our online and digital platforms where we engage existing clients in the tasks that they need to complete as part of their, part of being a customer of Valley. I can share with you a couple of things that are, really important to me. And a couple of things that I bring, probably more so from what people might describe as the tech focused world. But digital product management is a way of working that you see from a lot of organizations like Amazon, Facebook, Google, Apple, and bringing that into financial services. We're focused from a product standpoint on things like, is what we're offering to our customers, digitally, and the financial products that underpin it. Is it desirable? Do our customers need it? Is it feasible? Is it something that we can do, building on our core strengths? And that can be everything from, our business strategy, but also to the, do we have the technologists in place yet to help support what it is that we're after? And then is it viable? Can we build a sustainable business off of the things that we're doing? And our philosophy is I think a sea change in, what my experiences have been early on in the industry. And we talk about product versus project and outcomes over output. And let me explain a little bit about what that means. But when you're, focused with an opportunity, let's say something that's very popular right now in financial services is digital account onboarding, allowing customers to go to your website and to sign up for, just say, a new checking account. Project mentality would approach that and say, we're done with that initiative once we've implemented the technology, launched it, gone through our change control board, clicked the button, made the link live on our website, and people can go through that process. In a product world, you set out with, what is the impact that I want to have to our business and over what dimensions? So what amount of deposits do I want to acquire? What number of customers do I want to acquire? From what segments? And what number of accounts? And what type of accounts? And so planning it out from a business performance standpoint first, and then going through that process, of which certainly technology implementation is a part of, but then ongoing management of that capability to ensure that it's achieving the outcomes that it was intended to when you started from the beginning. So am I getting the number of customers that I intended? Am I getting the deposits that I need for my business? And if I'm not, then why? And so taking that approach versus a project approach, where maybe you then be on to the next, implementation of technology somewhere, means not only a new way of looking at things, but also more dedication and, specific teams focused on those outcomes over a longer period of time until you achieve them.
Well, Chris, you mentioned the word digital, and certainly we're talking about technology. In our industry, it seems like a lot of that is pointed toward the consumer market. Are you seeing either at Valley or elsewhere that this is also bleeding over into the business and commercial market?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I think, for sure you see, that focus on the consumer market because there's, probably a version of the Willie Sutton quote that you could put there. And from a vendor standpoint, that's where the numbers are. So if you're a vendor and you're, charging a financial institution, X number of dollars per customer and per account, you want to go where the volume is, and the volume is certainly in retail. But where we have to evolve as an industry, and I know many recognize that, is that we have to understand our core competencies, and then how do we leverage digital to support us through those things so that we can. It's not just about pricing. How do we focus on delivering value to our clients and to our business clients? And so many times today, it's on that relationship aspect and pricing. I recall, at GSBC, in our first year, we did an exercise, and the prompt was to write down, what your bank's strategic differentiator was. And Chris, maybe I can ask you a question. What do you think that the number one item was when asked, what was your bank's strategic differentiator?
One of the top ones, if not the top one, has to be we give great service.
That's right. That's exactly it. Right. So how do you differentiate if everybody is focused on customer service? And so what I would pose to you is we have to focus on value. And so how do we understand our businesses? So we're at Valley, we're a big, CRE, C&I, and then, residential mortgage type organization. And so we're starting to dip our toes into partnering with fintechs in areas that help support those businesses. And so if I have a number of rental units and I need to be able to collect rental payments for that, and I need to be able to track, potential expenses, for that, there's technology solutions that we can integrate into our digital platforms that help support those businesses. And they're relatively light to be able to go do those things. And so, you can imagine if you start to bundle those things together, you start to create some value for your clients, not just in the, quote unquote customer service side, and certainly not just in the pricing, side of things, but in the, what can my financial institution help me as a business owner, be better at than the other institution that I might be looking and comparing them against.
Chris, you mentioned GSBC. You were probably not the prototypical student, especially first year student last year. So here's my question. You went to Boulder. What were your takeaways during your first year?
It's a great question. So the first thing that I come away with is, wow, what an impact that just 2 weeks focused and dedicated, where you've kind of shut out as much of the emails and the conference calls and the Zoom calls as possible, and focus on some of these fundamentals can have. So as I described, I'm in financial services for the better part of 20 years. And coming into it, I always knew the Jimmy Stewart, It's a Wonderful Life, model of banking. Right. And that's what I come into it with. But really, I'm skewed more towards the technology, aspect of things and how that's supporting the business. But, taking and spending time on courses like our, asset and liabilities, courses, and then digging into specific performance was really eye opening and connected to my sense of curiosity. I have to understand how things work. I think that's shared by many, technologists. And understanding these tools were available to us, and then actually bringing this information back to my team, so sharing, with them, if it's things like UBPR reports or call reports, on our bank. And actually I did an exercise at an all hands where, I connected what we do and the company's business performance together. So bringing up the income, statement, and talking about, if there's new, products and services that we booked, and what our performance is, and letting people see, right in the income statement, here's the projects, that you worked on, or here's the products that you work on, today, and here's what that's contributed. Or we had a big savings in a particular area where we consolidated a vendor, and being able to look at, the expense line and connecting that back. I think that was really powerful for the team because they wanted to understand, what their purpose is and how it connects to the bigger, picture. Because I think outside of, those that are on the, maybe on the sales teams, the direct sales teams, it's probably hard for other parts of the organization to understand what that impact is. And then also I'd say it was really powerful for me and helpful for me was, just as a highlight, the leadership course and the time that we spent going through, in this particular case, we use disc profiles, and I'm starting to employ that on my team. And what it calls out is, sometimes during your normal hiring practices, we all like to spend time with people, that are like us, and there's some inherent biases, in that, but you don't always get to choose, and also need to be aware of those biases. And you want to hire, the best person, for that job. And if they're different from you in the way that they approach things, what are the tools that you have in order to be able to work with that? And I think some of the things that we learned in that leadership course, and going through some of the exercises there were really powerful for me and things that I'm carrying forward to my team. I'm really looking forward to, to this year and the end of July. It's been in another 2 weeks. I can't wait to see what I'll be able to bring back.
So now you're fully immersed back in the banking world. What do you think the banking industry is doing right in terms of technology and offering digital products?
Yeah, so I think the more that we recognize that, our customers, whether they're, retail or commercial customers, you can't avoid the interactions with companies and their products like, Amazon and Google, and Apple, and, how those many times feel like magic to customers, that they just understand what their needs are, or they have the ability to get information that they want and they need, almost instantaneously. And so we have to be mindful of those things. And the more I think we recognize the way that they're operating, and how we look to model our way of interacting, with our clients and customers that way, it'll benefit us. And you can look at the pandemic and what we've just been through. I mean, it's only accelerated the adoption of technology and this increased expectations, from our customers. So, if it's next day shipping, if it's meal delivery and grocery delivery, or ordering something ahead, being able to pick it up and to save time, we need to look for what are the analogs to us, in the financial services industry. And there's some that are out there that are looking at this, I would say ourselves included, and to say, how do we allow you to maybe pre-stage a transaction, before you come into a financial institution, and you can use mobile application, or digital website to be able to do that. I think the other thing that financial institutions are focused on is, again, what are our core capabilities? You see a lot in the what's called BaaS, or banking as a service environment. So smaller institutions in the US are having an outsized impact because they are leveraging their banking license, and they're leveraging some of their technology platforms to support fintechs that are sitting on top of them. And the financial institutions themselves are, generating some incremental income over their, maybe traditional channels by leveraging their charters in this way and by leveraging their operations in this way. And so I think that's really powerful. And where you can see some of these things start to come together, I'll just share with you, I bought a new coffee maker over the weekend, and I was on a particular retailer's website, and I had the opportunity to apply for a co-branded card instantly, and I was able to use it and check out in under 5 minutes. And I think it's, seeing where financial services becomes embedded into our, everyday lives, as opposed to, disjointed experiences, which they might be, today, is certainly where the future lies. And those that can build those types of experiences are going to ultimately be the winners.
Well, if I take a different tact, where is the banking industry struggling in terms of technology and offering digital products?
So I'm going to channel something from my M&T days. The former chairman and CEO there, Bob Wilmers, just had some great letters to shareholders and the community. And in there, after the financial crisis, he wrote about, with the new regulatory environment, that the government had unwittingly, created, with those organizations that were too big to fail, a class that now we talk about as, too small to succeed. The focus of resource and expenditures that are associated with that for both compliance and regulation and fraud mitigation, makes it really difficult for most institutions to get beyond and scale. And then even to get into some of these things that I was talking about in the outset. I'm very sympathetic to it. And I don't know that, that there's some easy answers in front of institutions today other than, to focus on your core customer base and core value proposition and knowing, what you know. It was great coming to GSBC and, getting the perspective of, more agriculture focused financial institutions. I can't imagine, I know Valley Bank, it's not a core competency for us to go into that market and to be able to underwrite, heads of cattle, as an example. And then talking to some of my peers about how they do that is just absolutely fascinating. And so how do organizations stay in that area and develop, I shouldn't say stay in it, but focus on those areas? And how do they develop unique propositions there so that they're not overburdened with too much of the, resource intensive nature of trying to expand into some of the other markets? And, I think it's just a thing that we're going to have to go through as an industry for better, for worse.
Chris, you said something really unique, too small to succeed. You have a unique perspective on the capital it takes to be successful, with technology and digital products. Do you see where, some banks aren't going to be able to make it on their own, and maybe they are going to have to partner heavily with fintech firms, or maybe even have to merge somewhere else because this cost is so extensive?
Yeah, I think, look, every financial institution's, situation is different, certainly on their, what market are they in, what products and services do they offer, how have they, structured their strategy, but absolutely with this, evolving market and changing, macro environment that we're in, for, some institutions, they have to look for, other means of income. And like I cited in that example for banking as a service, I think that's a really, really excellent example of that, where it's if I'm going to focus on, building infrastructure and teams around compliance, then, can I, if I put that infrastructure in place, built that foundation, can I leverage that as a revenue generating opportunity for me? Can I work with third parties and allow them to leverage my banking license for their products and their services? And can I recoup some of that investment? And I think it's looking at things in new ways, such as that type of example, that's going to be, helpful to institutions that otherwise may find that, they're in a difficult spot.
Well, do you think there's a next, I'll put this in air quotes, big leap in the industry in terms of technology and digital products?
Yeah, a couple of them. And I would say we're starting to experience a bit of it now. And that is with things like real-time payments. And, with some of these big leaps, there's also, new issues that arise. And so I'm sure many people are familiar with, with Zelle, as a platform. And it's a thing that the banks have, it's been around for a while, but now, within the last few years and particularly accelerated with the pandemic, financial institutions have been adopting. But along with those real-time payments, which are great experiences for customers, come, increased opportunity for, malactors and fraudsters and others to come in and take advantage of the system. So again, how do financial institutions have the ability to respond to that? And so with these big leaps, come some, it's like the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, thing, so to speak. But real-time payments aren't going away. Same day ACH, isn't going away. And then I would argue that those institutions that aren't embracing that and planning for those types of things, are going to find themselves in a very difficult spot in the not too distant future. Something else that's that's really heartening to me as it relates to the I think the roots in my early banking career, and then also is a big part of the ethos at Valley Bank around we consider ourselves a community bank, even though we're 50 billion in assets and have 250 branches. But the concept of human plus digital, and so digital doesn't replace the humans behind the bank. And I think this concept is really gaining a lot of traction, and you're starting to see some interesting things where we're connecting people through digital. If you want to describe it as a FaceTime, type experience to their bankers, or some of the digital chat capabilities that we can start those conversations and then finish them up with a human. I think is heartening to me, both from a philosophy standpoint and then also as a customer, because I don't know about you, but I really dislike chatbots. They never give me the answer to what it is that I'm looking for, and I'm always trying to find a way to get myself to a human so that I can explain what my issue is. And so I think the faster that we get to those types of experiences, the better it'll be for institutions, for consumers, customers, but also the people that work in those institutions.
Do you think that everything we've experienced over the last couple of years as a result of COVID, i.e., the advent of Zoom type communications, do you think that will speed up the acceptance by customers in the thing that you just described?
I think for some it will, but it's a really interesting thing that we're dealing with right now. I mentioned the longevity of our institution, how long we've been around. We have a significant portion of our customer base that's been with us for a long period of time, and a number of them are afraid, quite frankly, to put in things like a username and a password, or sign up with putting their social security number online. And I think rightfully so. And so I think the more that we hear and we see fraud cases and fraud opportunity, and people who didn't grow up with technology in the first place, that they weren't digital natives, there will be those folks that are going to find it difficult to adopt some of this technology. But what I hope is, and this is to your point, the more that we can humanize that element and let people know that there is a person that they can trust, and how to know that they should trust that person, whether it's somebody that they recognize because otherwise they've been in one of the branches and know that person, or by other means. I think that is in our near-term future.
Well, as we said earlier, Chris, you certainly have a different perspective of the banking industry than the typical student at GSBC. So here, final two questions before I get you out of here today. Number one, what excites you most about the banking industry?
Look, I mean, fundamentally, and I think I could probably talk to any bank CEO about this, and we would agree, that financial institutions, are intended to help people, and businesses achieve their goals, their dreams, their aspirations. And so that's never gone away. And, that's really inspiring to me fundamentally. And the fact that we, now have new ways to do that, and new channels, with new technology and new capabilities, it's just, I'm in, certainly for me personally, I'm in the right place and I'm in the right spot. And I think this convergence, you mentioned I'm atypical, and I think that's just a moment in time. This convergence between quote unquote traditional banking, and then also the quote unquote, tech, person, we have to get there. And so we have to have technology people that understand, the fundamentals of our business. And we have to have, people that understand the fundamentals of our business, understand the technology and what it can do. And so that excites me, certainly the most.
Well, let me do a 180 on you. What scares you most about the banking industry?
Yeah, I think with that is, maybe I could go back to that exercise that we did first years, and that everybody thinks that they're going to differentiate on customer service. And that probably, is part of, complacency that can come, from regulated institutions, where certainly you have, protectionary policies in place that protect your existence from maybe entrants like, some fintechs that might be threatening. But, over time, I think that complacency just means to, what we were talking about earlier, where, you can get into the too small to succeed space, and it just goes in a difficult direction from there. I think along the lines here is that it's easy for people that don't want to be complacent, though, to start just chasing the competition blindly. And many times that includes, seeing what, let's pick on the fintechs for a minute, what they're doing out there. And, what I can say is, just because a company exists, just because a product exists, just because, venture capitalist firms have invested in, a company or their pro forma, doesn't mean that it's ultimately going to be successful. And so it gets back to, understanding the fundamentals of the business, and then looking for ways to innovate, looking for ways to evolve on those core competencies in core markets. And again, those institutions that choose not to do that, I think, have a very short lifespan.
Well, Chris, you've shared some great ideas, and I'm sure some of our listeners are going to maybe want to go a little bit deeper. So if they do have some questions of you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Sure. One of the best ways is to find me on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/Chris Craver. You can also email me at ccraver, CCRAVER, @valley.com.
Well, Chris, I know you're a busy guy. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to visit with us today. And I'm looking forward to the end of July because as a second-year student, you will be in my class.
Chris, go easy on me, would you? I got a lot going on.
I'm just hoping that after the class that you still want to be in banking.
Oh, that's guaranteed. That's guaranteed. I can't wait to, like I said, I can't wait to go rekindle some of those friendships, meet some new folks, and learn some great things that I can bring back. I appreciate the time today, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in Boulder.
Likewise.